There was a time when a tractor wasn't traded every few years, it stayed, through dust storms, hard winters, and generations of farmers who trusted steel more than promises, and out across America's fields, a few machines under 100 horsepower proved they could outwork tractors twice their size, and somehow, they're still going today. Allis-Chalmers D17. Before the giant tractors took over American farming, there was a time when a dependable mid-sized machine could carry an entire family operation on its back, and few tractors earned that reputation quite like the Allis-Chalmers D17, introduced in the late 1950s. The D17 wasn't flashy, it didn't need to be, painted in that unmistakable Persian orange. It became a familiar sight across dairy farms and small grain operations throughout the Midwest. You could hear one long before sunrise, idling beside an old wooden barn while frost still covered the fence posts. With around 52 horsepower in the early models and closer to 63 in later versions, the D17 had just enough muscle for the jobs that mattered most: pulling a hay baler in July heat, working a two-bottom plow through heavy black soil, hauling wagons loaded with corn while the family rode on the back rack during harvest season. What made farmers trust it was the simplicity: no complicated electronics, no fragile systems, just solid gears, reliable hydraulics, and an engine that kept going year after year with basic maintenance and a little mechanical common sense. Back in 1959, a new D17 cost somewhere around $4,500 depending on the setup. For many farm families, that wasn't pocket change, it was a serious investment, sometimes the biggest purchase they'd ever made besides the land itself. But once it arrived at the farm, it often stayed there for decades, and somehow, many still are. Even today, you'll still find old D17s raking hay, pulling wagons, or sitting proudly at county tractor shows with their original paint faded by half a century of sun, not because people forgot to replace them, but because they never truly needed to. Yet as dependable as the little orange tractor was, another machine arrived in the 1960s that farmers began calling one of the toughest blue tractors ever built. Ford 5000. There was something honest about the old Ford 5000, no unnecessary chrome, no oversized cab, just a tough blue tractor built for farmers who needed a machine that started every morning and stayed running until the work was done. By the mid-1960s, farms across America were changing fast, equipment was getting larger, workdays were getting longer, and many farmers needed a tractor that could handle heavier jobs without stepping into the high price of big horsepower machines. That's where the Ford 5000 found its place. With roughly 69 PTO horsepower and a rugged four-cylinder diesel engine, it became one of the hardest working tractors Ford ever built. On small and mid-sized farms, the 5000 seemed capable of everything: pulling hay balers through thick summer fields, running rotary cutters along fence lines, hauling loaded grain wagons down dusty county roads while the engine settled into that deep steady rhythm farmers still remember today. And it rarely complained. The beauty of the Ford 5000 was its balance: enough power to tackle serious work, but simple enough that most farmers could repair it themselves in the machine shed with a toolbox, a service manual, and years of experience passed down from father to son. Back in 1968, a new Ford 5000 typically sold for around $6,000 depending on options and tires. For many families, that represented years of careful budgeting and sacrifice. Some farmers traded livestock, others delayed buying a new pickup just to afford one, but once the tractor arrived, it often became the backbone of the farm for the next 20 or 30 years. Even now, decades later, plenty of Ford 5000s are still out there earning their keep. Their faded blue paint tells stories of hay seasons, cold starts, and long harvest nights under dim barn lights. They were never considered glamorous tractors, but maybe that's exactly why people trusted them. Because the Ford 5000 wasn't built to impress neighbors, it was built to survive. And further west, across the American countryside, another tractor with a different kind of engine would soon earn a reputation for running almost forever on little more than fuel and determination. Massey Ferguson 165. Some tractors earned respect because they were powerful, others earned it because they simply refused to quit, and for thousands of American farmers, the Massey Ferguson 165 became the kind of machine you could depend on season after season without a second thought. There was nothing fancy about it, the lines were simple, the controls were straightforward, but sitting behind the wheel of a Massey 165 felt familiar, almost comforting, especially during long summer days cutting hay beneath the Heat of a Midwestern sky. Introduced in the mid-1960s, the 165 carried around 58 horsepower, though many farmers would tell you it worked harder than tractors rated much higher. Much of that reputation came from the legendary Perkins diesel engine. Cold mornings, long hours, neglected maintenance, somehow that engine just kept running. Mechanics loved it because it was easy to work on. Farmers loved it because it almost never gave them a reason to call the mechanic in the first place. Across America, the Massey Ferguson 165 became a common sight on family farms, pulling square balers through windrows of dry alfalfa, feeding cattle in the dead of winter, raking hay while kids rode nearby in wagons coated with dust and sunlight. It wasn't the biggest tractor in the county, but it often became the busiest. Back around 1967, a new MF-165 usually cost close to $5,500 depending on the transmission and equipment package. For smaller farm operations, that was still a major commitment. Purchase carefully discussed around kitchen tables after supper, but unlike many machines that wore out after a decade, the 165 often stayed in service for generations. That's part of why so many still survive today. Even now, old Masseys continue to fire up after years sitting in sheds, their faded red paint hiding countless hours of honest farm work. Some are still used daily. Others have become treasured family tractors passed from grandfathers to sons and grandchildren who remember riding. On the fender during hay season, the Massey Ferguson 165 proved that durability wasn't always about size or raw horsepower. Sometimes it was about heart. But deeper in America's corn country, another tractor was building a reputation for pure pulling strength, a machine farmers trusted when the work became truly heavy. International Harvester 966. There are tractors people admire, and then there are tractors people trust with their livelihood. The International Harvester 966 belonged to that second group. By the early 1970s, farming in America was becoming bigger, faster, and far more demanding. Implements were growing wider, harvest seasons felt shorter, and farmers needed machines that could handle punishing workloads day after day without breaking down in the middle of the field. That's exactly where the 966 earned its reputation. With roughly 95 horsepower from its massive 6-cylinder diesel engine, the IH966 had a different personality from many tractors of its time. It wasn't light on its feet, it wasn't elegant, but when heavy tillage work began and the soil turned stubborn, farmers knew the red tractor would keep pulling, and that engine sound, deep, steady, almost like distant thunder rolling across the fields. The 966 became especially respected throughout the Corn Belt, where long days pulling chisel plows and large discs pushed equipment to the limit. While some tractors struggled under heavy loads, the International seemed to dig in harder. Many farmers swore the tractor actually liked hard work. Back around 1973, a new IH966 often sold for somewhere near $11,000 depending on tires, cab options, and transmission setup. That was a tremendous amount of money for most farm families at the time. In some rural communities, buying one meant taking on serious debt and betting the future of the farm on good harvests and stable grain prices. But for many families, the gamble paid off, because once the 966 arrived, it stayed reliable through countless planting and harvest seasons, through muddy springs, through drought years, through the long nights when headlights cut across fields long after supper had gone cold. Back at the house, even today, the old red tractors remain incredibly common at auctions and working farms. Their paint may be faded, their seats may be cracked from decades in the sun, but many still fire up with that familiar growl and head straight back to work like no time has passed at all. That kind of durability cannot be engineered overnight, it's earned one season at a time. And while the International Harvester 966 became famous for brute strength, one green tractor from Waterloo, Iowa would eventually earn something even greater, a reputation as perhaps the most trusted farm tractor America ever built. John Deere 4020. John Deere 4020. Some tractors became successful. The John Deere 4020 became legendary. Even now, more than half a century after it first rolled out of Waterloo, Iowa, many farmers still speak about the 4020 with the kind of respect usually reserved for old war heroes or trusted family members. Because for countless American farms, this wasn't just another machine parked in the shed, it was the tractor that carried the farm through the hardest years. Introduced in 1963, the John Deere 4020 arrived at exactly the right moment in American agriculture. Farms were growing larger, equipment demands were increasing, and farmers needed a tractor powerful enough to handle modern workloads without sacrificing reliability. the 4020 delivered both. With around 95 horsepower and one of the smoothest diesel engines John Deere had ever built, the tractor quickly proved itself in fields across the Midwest, pulling cultivators through endless rows of corn, running balers during hot July afternoons, hauling wagons heavy with soybeans beneath the glow of harvest moonlight, and somehow, it always seemed ready for one more day. Part of the 4020's reputation came from its remarkable balance. It had enough power for serious field work, yet it remained simple enough for farmers to maintain themselves. On cold winter mornings, many owners trusted the old Deere to start when other tractors stayed frozen in the shed. Back in the mid-1960s, a new John Deere 4020 often cost close to $8,500 depending on tires, transmission, and equipment packages. For many families, that kind of money represented years of sacrifice. Some farmers postponed building new barns, others delayed replacing trucks or combines just to bring home a 4020, but few ever regretted it, because the tractor didn't merely survive through the years, it endured. Today, thousands of John Deere 4020s are still running across America. Some remain daily work tractors, others appear at county fairs with grandchildren riding proudly beside owners who bought them brand new decades ago. The green paint may be faded now, the seats worn smooth by time, but the sound of that engine still carries something powerful across rural America, a reminder of when tractors were built not for short-term convenience, but for a lifetime of honest work. These tractors were never built for comfort or attention. They were built to feed families, survive hard seasons, and keep running when farmers needed them most. And maybe that's why, after all these years, the sound of an old tractor still feels like the heartbeat of rural America.